Trust is one of the most expensive things you can give away. Most people do not get betrayed because they are foolish. They get betrayed because they trust too quickly. They listen to words when they should be watching behavior. They believe promises when they should be studying patterns. They become attached to the image someone presents. While ignoring the person standing behind the mask, every person you meet is revealing something. The way they treat people who cannot benefit them, the way they react when they are challenged, the way they behave when they believe nobody is watching, the sudden change in their voice when you disagree with them, the questions they ask, the information they avoid, the favors they remember, the favors they conveniently forget. These are not random details, they are clues. And if you learn how to recognize them, you can begin to understand people long before they reveal their true intentions. The dangerous mistake is assuming that people will tell you who they are. They rarely do. Most people show you the version of themselves they believe will get them what they want. They may appear generous while calculating what generosity will return to them. They may appear loyal while secretly keeping track of your weaknesses. They may praise you today because they need access to you tomorrow. This does not mean you should become paranoid. It means you should become observant. You should stop asking, "Do I like this person?" and start asking, "What does this person consistently reveal through their actions?" Because charm can be performed, kindness can be performed, loyalty can be promised. But patterns are much harder to fake. The person who constantly speaks about honesty may be hiding something. The person who never accepts responsibility may eventually make you responsible for their mistakes. The person who desperately wants your trust may have a reason for wanting it so quickly. And sometimes, the most revealing moment comes when you stop giving someone what they want. Watch what happens when you say no. Watch what happens when you establish a boundary. Watch what happens when you succeed. Watch what happens when you stop chasing their approval. That is when the performance begins to crack. In this speech, you are going to learn how to read people before you place your trust in them, not by becoming suspicious of everyone, but by becoming difficult to deceive. Because once you understand human behavior, you stop judging people by what they say. You begin judging them by what they repeatedly do. And that is when you realize something powerful. People are always telling you who they are. You simply have to learn how to read the language they speak without words. One of the greatest mistakes you can make when trying to understand another person is to study how they behave when they know they are being watched. Anyone can control their expression when they are conscious of an audience. Anyone can appear generous, respectful, patient, loyal, and sincere when there is something to gain from looking that way. The real character of a person is often revealed when the performance is no longer necessary. Watch what they do when they believe nobody is watching. This is where the carefully constructed image begins to disappear. A person who speaks constantly about kindness may become cruel towards someone who cannot help them. A person who claims to value loyalty may casually betray someone when there is an advantage waiting on the other side. Someone who presents themselves as humble may become arrogant the moment they receive power, money, recognition, or influence. These moments matter because there is no audience to impress. When people believe they are being observed, they often behave according to the identity they want others to believe. But when they think there are no consequences, their deeper habits begin to surface. They reveal how they handle responsibility, how they speak about others, how they respond to temptation, and how much restraint they actually possess. You do not need to interrogate someone to understand them. You need to observe. Notice how they behave towards service workers, strangers, employees, family members, and people beneath their social position. Notice whether their respect disappears when they believe someone has less power than they do. Notice whether they become generous only when someone important is present. Notice whether their kindness continues when there is absolutely nothing to gain. These small moments can tell you more than hours of conversation. A person can prepare impressive answers when you ask them about their values, but you cannot easily prepare every unconscious reaction: the impatient sigh, the dismissive glance, the sudden insult when they feel ignored, the way they talk about someone who has just left the room, the pleasure they take in another person's failure, the way they treat a mistake made by someone weaker than themselves. These are fragments of truth. And you should pay attention to fragments because people rarely reveal themselves all at once. Trust should not be built from a single impressive conversation. It should be built from repeated evidence. If someone consistently behaves with integrity when there is no reward, that behavior carries weight. If someone repeatedly changes their character depending on who is present, that inconsistency carries even more weight. Do not be hypnotized by someone's public personality. Look for the private patterns. The person who is polite to you but cruel to everyone else is giving you information. The person who appears generous but constantly reminds people of their favors is giving you information. The person who talks about loyalty while secretly collecting people's weaknesses is giving you information. And sometimes the most revealing evidence appears in ordinary situations. Watch them when they are tired. Watch them when they are frustrated. Watch them when they lose. Watch them when they are ignored. Watch them when they receive something they believe they deserve. Watch them when someone else receives what they wanted. Pressure strips away decoration. When circumstances become uncomfortable, people have less energy to maintain an image. Their instincts become more visible. Their patience is tested. Their ego becomes exposed. Their treatment of others changes. Their true priorities emerge. This is why you should never rush to trust someone simply because they make you feel comfortable. Comfort is not evidence of character. Charm is not evidence of loyalty. Confidence is not evidence of competence. Words are only claims, behavior is evidence. If you want to understand someone, stop concentrating only on what they tell you about themselves. Study what they repeatedly do when there is no reward for doing the right thing, no punishment for doing the wrong thing, and no audience waiting to applaud them. Because the person who behaves well only when watched is showing you a performance, while the person who behaves with integrity when nobody is watching is showing you something far more valuable: the pattern beneath the mask. One of the fastest ways to understand a person's character is to watch how they treat people who have nothing to offer them. Most people are polite when they want something. They are attentive when they need approval. They become generous when generosity can improve their reputation. But what happens when there is no reward, no advantage, and no powerful audience watching? That is where you begin to see the difference between genuine character and calculated behavior. Pay attention to how someone speaks to the waiter, the cashier, the cleaner, the assistant, the stranger, or anyone they believe is beneath their social position. These interactions may appear insignificant, but they often reveal how a person thinks about power. A person who respects only those above them is not necessarily respectful. They may simply be strategic. Watch how quickly their attitude changes when someone's status changes. If they are warm toward an influential person but dismissive toward someone with less power, understand what you are seeing. Their kindness may not be rooted in character. It may be rooted in self-interest. This is one of the most important distinctions you can learn when judging people. Do not simply ask, "How do they treat me?" Ask, "How do they treat people they do not need?" Because eventually, your usefulness to someone may change. Today, they may need your friendship. Tomorrow, they may no longer need your connections, your money, your attention, your approval, or your protection. If their respect depends entirely on what you provide, you will eventually see a different version of them. This is why observing people in their ordinary interactions is so valuable. You are not looking for perfection. Everyone becomes impatient. Everyone has bad days. Everyone occasionally reacts poorly under pressure. What matters is the pattern. Does the person recognize when they have treated someone unfairly? Do they apologize? Do they show basic respect even when frustrated? Do they use someone's weakness as an opportunity to humiliate them? Do they become arrogant when they gain authority? Do they believe certain people deserve respect while others deserve contempt? These questions reveal far more than a charming conversation ever could. A person may tell you they value equality, compassion, and humility, but if they constantly insult people who cannot defend themselves, their actions are contradicting their words. When words and behavior conflict, believe the behavior. People often reveal their hierarchy of respect without realizing it. They may laugh with someone powerful while mocking someone vulnerable. They may listen carefully to a wealthy person while interrupting someone struggling. They may treat an attractive person with extraordinary kindness while ignoring someone they consider unattractive. These are not meaningless details. They reveal what the person values. And once you begin noticing these patterns, you become much harder to deceive. You stop being impressed by how someone treats you during the first few meetings. You begin watching how they treat everyone around them. Because if someone is cruel to others while being charming toward you, you should not assume you are special. You should ask yourself why their behavior changes around you. Perhaps they want something. Perhaps they want your approval. Perhaps they are still trying to win your trust. And perhaps the version of themselves they are showing you is simply the version they believe will be most useful. Never make the mistake of thinking, they would never treat me that way. You have not earned immunity from someone's character. If they consistently disrespect people when they have power, eventually circumstances may place you beneath that power. If they betray people whenever a better opportunity appears, there is no logical reason to believe you will permanently escape that pattern. Character travels. The way someone treats others is often a preview of how they will eventually treat you when the circumstances change, so observe without rushing to judge. Watch quietly. Let people reveal themselves through repetition. You do not need to confront them. You do not need to expose them. You do not need to announce what you have noticed. Simply remember what you saw. Because the most valuable information about a person often appears in the moments when they believe their behavior does not matter, when there is nothing to gain, when no important person is watching, and when the person standing in front of them has nothing they need. Words are easy to produce. Anyone can tell you what you want to hear. Anyone can promise loyalty, claim honesty, speak about their principles, and describe themselves as trustworthy, but words cost almost nothing. Behavior costs something. Consistency costs even more. This is why you should never judge a person primarily by what they say. Listen to their words, but study their patterns. A person can apologize beautifully and repeat the same behavior the next week. They can promise they will change and then continue doing exactly what they did before. They can tell you they respect your boundaries while repeatedly testing them. They can call themselves loyal while disappearing whenever you are no longer useful to them. The problem is not that people always lie. The problem is that words allow people to control your perception before their behavior has had enough time to reveal the truth. When someone first enters your life, you know very little about them. You have their stories, their explanations, their charm, and their carefully selected version of their past. You do not yet have enough evidence to know whether those claims are reliable, so do not rush to fill the gaps with trust. Let time provide the evidence. Watch whether their actions match their promises. If they say they value your time, notice whether they repeatedly waste it. If they say they respect honesty, notice how they behave when the truth becomes uncomfortable. If they claim to care about others, watch how they behave when helping someone becomes inconvenient. Consistency is one of the strongest indicators of character. One isolated mistake does not necessarily define a person, but repeated behavior begins to reveal a pattern. If someone repeatedly lies about small things, do not ignore it simply because the lies seem harmless. If someone repeatedly breaks small promises, pay attention. Small patterns often become larger problems when circumstances create greater pressure. You should also watch the distance between what a person says about themselves and what their behavior demonstrates. Someone may describe themselves as disciplined, but their daily habits reveal chaos. Someone may describe themselves as humble, but every conversation returns to their achievements. Someone may describe themselves as generous, but they become resentful whenever they give without receiving recognition. People often advertise the qualities they most want others to believe they possess. Your task is not to argue with their description. Your task is to compare the description with the evidence. Listen carefully when someone tells you stories about their previous relationships, friendships, workplaces, or conflicts. Pay attention to whether they accept responsibility or whether every story somehow ends with everyone else being the villain. If every former friend was jealous, every former partner was crazy, every colleague was incompetent, and every failure was someone else's fault, you are receiving valuable information, not necessarily proof that their stories are false, but evidence that their perspective may be worth examining carefully. Patterns appear in language as well as behavior. Watch what happens when they are contradicted. Watch whether they can admit uncertainty. Watch whether they change their story when challenged. Watch whether they suddenly become defensive when simple questions are asked. Trust should not require you to ignore contradictions. If someone tells you one thing today and something completely different tomorrow, do not immediately accuse them of deception. Instead, observe. Give the situation time. See whether the inconsistency repeats. You are not trying to become suspicious of everyone. You are learning to become patient. The impatient person wants an answer immediately. Can I trust them or not? The observant person asks a better question. What does the pattern tell me over time? That difference can protect you from countless mistakes. A trustworthy person does not need to constantly convince you that they are trustworthy. Their behavior gradually makes the argument for them. Their promises become believable because you have watched them keep promises before. Their apologies become meaningful because you have seen them correct their mistakes. Their loyalty becomes credible because you have witnessed how they behave when loyalty costs them something. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Someone can overwhelm you with attention for 3 weeks and disappear when the excitement fades. Someone can make enormous promises and then fail to keep simple commitments. Someone can tell you that you are important while repeatedly treating your time, boundaries, and feelings as insignificant. Do not confuse intensity with reliability. Real trust is built slowly through repeated evidence. So when someone speaks, listen, but when they act, pay closer attention. And when their words and actions contradict each other, do not force yourself to believe the words simply because they sound better. Give greater weight to the pattern, because words can create an impression in seconds, while consistent behavior reveals what a person actually does when the opportunity, pressure, temptation, or consequence appears. One of the simplest ways to discover someone's character is to tell them no, not because you want to provoke them, not because you want to create conflict, but because a boundary reveals what ordinary politeness often hides. When you always agree with someone, they have very little reason to reveal how they truly feel about you. They receive what they want, the interaction remains comfortable, and their patience is never tested. But the moment you refuse a request, protect your time, disagree with an opinion, or establish a limit, the situation changes. Now they have a choice. They can respect your decision, or they can try to control it. That reaction tells you something. A healthy person may be disappointed by your answer, but they can accept it. They may ask questions, negotiate respectfully, or simply move forward. Someone who feels entitled to you may react very differently. They may become angry, sarcastic, manipulative, distant, or suddenly cold. The important thing is not whether they like your boundary. The important thing is whether they respect it. This distinction can save you from trusting the wrong people. Many people appear kind as long as you are useful to them. They are pleasant when you agree with them, supportive when you follow their expectations, and affectionate when you make their lives easier. But once you stop cooperating with everything they want, their behavior changes. This is when you should pay attention. Do they attempt to make you feel guilty? Do they remind you of everything they have supposedly done for you? Do they accuse you of changing simply because you finally said no? Do they pressure you until you surrender? Do they withdraw affection to punish you? Do they turn other people against you? These reactions reveal how they understand relationships. A person who respects you understands that you have a separate mind, separate priorities, and separate limits. They may disagree with your choices, but they do not believe they own your decisions. A manipulative person often sees boundaries as obstacles. They do not hear no as a complete answer. They hear it as a challenge to overcome. And this is why boundaries are so revealing. They expose entitlement, they expose insecurity, they expose the need for control, they expose whether someone's affection is conditional. You should especially observe what happens when you refuse something small. You do not need to create a dramatic confrontation. Simply protect your time. Decline an invitation when you are unavailable. Refuse a favor you cannot reasonably provide. Disagree respectfully. Say that you need space. Then watch. The reaction may tell you more than months of pleasant conversation. Someone who respects you will eventually understand that your life does not revolve around their expectations. Someone who becomes hostile whenever you exercise independence may have been enjoying access to you more than they valued you. There is another important lesson here. Do not set boundaries only to test people. Set them because you actually have them. You are not conducting an experiment. You are living your life. The test happens naturally because every relationship eventually encounters limits. When you become comfortable saying no, you begin seeing people more clearly. Some people will disappear, some will complain, some will try harder to control you, and some will simply accept your decision and continue treating you with the same respect. Those are the people worth noticing. A person's reaction to your boundary can also reveal how they handle power. If they become cruel the moment they lose control of a situation, imagine what they might do if they gained significantly more power over you. Pay attention to how they respond when they cannot get their way. That is one of the most revealing moments in human behavior. Anyone can appear reasonable while everything is going according to their wishes. Character becomes visible when reality refuses to cooperate. You should also remember that saying no does not make you selfish. Your time has value. Your attention has value, your energy has value, your privacy has value, your decisions belong to you. People who genuinely respect you do not require unlimited access to prove your loyalty. And if someone constantly demands sacrifices from you while becoming offended whenever you ask for basic consideration, the relationship may be built around control rather than mutual respect. The goal is not to become cold or distrustful. The goal is to become observant enough to recognize the difference between someone who respects your freedom and someone who only respects you when you are useful, obedient, available, or easy to control. You can learn more about a person by watching how they respond to your success than by listening to everything they tell you about themselves. Failure can reveal character, but success reveals something equally important: how a person feels when someone else receives what they secretly wanted for themselves. Many people can support you when your achievements do not threaten them. They can congratulate you when your success is small. They can encourage you when you are still struggling. But when you begin to rise beyond them, when people start noticing you, when opportunities begin appearing in your life, their reactions may change. This is where you should pay attention. Do they become genuinely happy for you? Do they ask questions because they are interested? Do they celebrate your progress without turning the conversation back toward themselves? Or do they suddenly become distant, dismissive, sarcastic, or strangely competitive? Envy rarely announces itself directly. Most people will not tell you, "I am threatened by your success." Instead, it appears through subtle behavior. They may minimize your achievement by saying you were simply lucky. They may point out the flaws in something you worked hard to accomplish. They may congratulate you with a smile that does not reach their eyes. They may change the subject whenever you share good news. They may suddenly remind you of your past failures, as if your previous weaknesses cancel your current progress. These reactions are worth noticing. You should not automatically assume that every person who fails to celebrate you is jealous. People have their own struggles, emotions, and circumstances. But when dismissiveness becomes a repeated pattern, it gives you information. The same principle applies to your failures. Watch how people behave when you lose. A genuine friend does not necessarily celebrate every mistake you make, but they do not need your failure to feel powerful. They do not use your difficult moment as an opportunity to humiliate you. They do not suddenly reveal private information because you are vulnerable. They do not disappear simply because you can no longer provide entertainment, connections, money, status, or advantages. Failure creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates an opportunity for people to reveal themselves. Some will use that opportunity to help you. Others will use it to gain leverage. Pay attention to the difference. If someone becomes kinder when you are struggling, that can reveal compassion. If they become crueler, it can reveal something much darker. If they constantly remind you of your failures after you recover, they may be keeping your weakness stored as future ammunition. Never underestimate the importance of how someone handles information about your weaknesses. Trustworthy people understand that vulnerability is not permission. They do not collect your insecurities like weapons. They do not wait for the right moment to expose them. They protect what you trusted them with. You should also watch what happens when you succeed after someone expected you to fail. This is especially revealing. Some people are comfortable with you as long as they can predict your position. They like you when you are struggling beside them, but become uncomfortable when you begin changing. Your growth forces them to reconsider their own choices. Suddenly, your discipline reminds them of their excuses. Your confidence reminds them of their insecurity. Your progress reminds them of the opportunities they ignored. And instead of confronting themselves, they may try to reduce you. They may tell you that you have changed. They may accuse you of becoming arrogant. They may criticize your ambitions. Sometimes that criticism is justified. Success can change people, but sometimes the accusation is simply resistance to your growth. The key is to observe the pattern rather than reacting emotionally. Ask yourself whether this person challenges you because they genuinely care, or whether they seem uncomfortable whenever you become stronger. There is a major difference between constructive criticism and disguised resentment. A person who cares about you can tell you the truth while still being proud of your progress. A resentful person may only feel comfortable when you are beneath them. This is why you should observe people during three moments: when you are weak, when you are strong, and when you are receiving something they wanted. These moments remove the comfort of ordinary interaction. They force people to confront their emotions. And emotions often reveal priorities that words attempt to hide. You do not need everyone to celebrate you. You do not need constant praise, but you should notice who becomes uncomfortable whenever you grow, because the person who only supports the version of you that is smaller, weaker, poorer, less confident, or less successful may not actually love you as much as they love the position you occupy in their life. Real loyalty does not require you to remain beneath someone so they can feel superior. And when you begin to recognize who genuinely celebrates your rise, who patiently stands beside you during your fall, and who quietly becomes hostile whenever you become stronger, you begin to see not just how people feel about you, but what kind of relationship they were truly trying to build with you. People rarely reveal their deepest intentions directly. They usually reveal them through what they repeatedly do, what they consistently seek, and what changes when you stop giving them what they want. This is why charm, kindness, attention, and generosity should never be accepted as automatic proof of good intentions. A person can be extremely charming and still be calculating. Someone can be unusually generous because they expect something in return. Someone can give you constant attention because they want access to your time, information, connections, or influence. Someone can make you feel important Because making you feel important is the easiest way to gain your trust. The mistake is not appreciating kindness. The mistake is assuming that every act of kindness is completely selfless. When someone enters your life, pay attention to what they consistently want from you. Do they mostly ask for favors? Do they constantly seek information about your personal life? Do they appear whenever they need something and disappear when you need support? Do they flatter you before making a request? Do they suddenly become exceptionally warm whenever they want access to something you possess? These patterns matter. You should not become suspicious of every good gesture. Instead, learn to observe timing. Timing often reveals motives. If someone praises you intensely immediately before asking for a favor, notice it. If they suddenly become affectionate when they need your help, notice it. If they disappear after receiving what they wanted, notice that too. One event proves very little. A repeated pattern can reveal a great deal. Some people understand that direct manipulation is obvious, so they use subtle methods. They make you feel indebted without openly demanding anything. They remind you of the favors they have done. They create a sense that you owe them access, attention, loyalty, or obedience. This is why you should pay attention to the emotional effect of someone's kindness. Does their generosity make you feel respected, or does it make you feel trapped? There is a difference. Genuine kindness gives without constantly demanding repayment. Manipulative kindness often creates an invisible debt. A person may say, "I was only helping you," while secretly expecting you to surrender something later. They may give you something you never requested, then use that gift as leverage during an argument. They may offer support, but later remind you repeatedly that you could not have succeeded without them. The gift was never entirely a gift, it was an investment. This does not mean every favor has a hidden motive. Human relationships naturally involve exchange, cooperation, and mutual support. The important question is whether the person respects your freedom after helping you. A trustworthy person can give without needing ownership over you. A manipulative person may use generosity to purchase influence. Watch how they react when you refuse to repay their kindness in the way they expected. If their warmth suddenly disappears, you have learned something. If their respect disappears, you have learned even more. Another powerful clue is how much they want to know before they have earned your trust. Some people ask deeply personal questions very early. They want to know your insecurities, ambitions, fears, financial situation, relationships, weaknesses, and private struggles before the relationship has developed enough to justify that level of access. Curiosity is normal, but excessive curiosity combined with rapid intimacy can sometimes be a strategy. Information is power. The more someone knows about your emotional weaknesses, the easier it becomes for them to influence you. So do not reveal everything simply because someone appears interested. Let trust grow gradually. Give people information in layers. Watch what they do with the small things before giving them the larger things. If you tell someone something minor and they immediately repeat it to others, you have received useful information. If they respect small boundaries, they may eventually earn access to greater trust. If they constantly test your limits, they are showing you that your privacy matters less to them than their curiosity. The same principle applies to flattery. Flattery can be sincere, but excessive flattery can also be a tool. When someone constantly tells you exactly what you want to hear, ask yourself why. Are they trying to understand you, or are they trying to influence you? A person who genuinely respects you will sometimes disagree with you. They will not need to constantly feed your ego to maintain your attention. The person who only tells you what makes you feel good may be trying to control the version of reality you see. So listen to compliments, but study motives. Observe timing. Observe consistency. Observe what happens when you stop providing value. That final observation can be especially revealing. When you become less available, do they still care? When you stop solving their problems, do they still contact you? When you cannot provide money, connections, status, attention, or emotional support, does their behavior remain the same? If the relationship collapses the moment your usefulness disappears, You have learned what was holding it together. Real trust does not require you to ignore human motives. It requires you to understand them. You can appreciate someone's kindness without immediately surrendering your judgment. You can enjoy someone's charm without giving them unrestricted access. You can accept someone's generosity without allowing that generosity to become a chain around your decisions. The goal is not to assume everyone has a hidden agenda. The goal is to become patient enough to let people's repeated behavior reveal whether their kindness is a gift, an investment, a performance, or a strategy designed to gain something from you.